And we're continuing in our series here. And we'll start there with that 16th chapter. Actually, we'll go to the 18th. After God pours the vials out, Babylon comes into his remembrance. There's something special for her. As we read the prophets and we find that God some nations opportunity to repent even during the tribulation, but there are some nations where there was a destiny for a destruction. Now, it doesn't mean that people in those countries couldn't be saved or they couldn't come to God, but there was a destiny for those nations to literally be destroyed and be called out into that great battle of Armageddon. But nonetheless, God remembers suddenly, after this tribulation period, God remembers Babylon. Something special for this group or this system of people that have always oppressed, that have never reached their hand out to help, is what the prophets say. It's a nation or it is a system that has oppressed the people mercilessly, simply chased their own gain. And a lot of people have put this on the Catholic Church. Some people go so far as to put it on the Muslim Church, and they put it on every other religious system because that's our American way of thinking, and that is this Western thought that this false religion has to be a religion according to our understanding. But this false religion, we've come to find out, is even more so a system. And this is why you continually hear me refer to these things as systems, because they are nothing more than a means by which God uses to communicate his legacy, but by the same token, the devil utilizes systems also. And this is what we define as human beings in a social setting. We define these things as religious experiences or religious liturgies. There are certain things in the life of a Christian that become primary, become key in one's life as a saint. A good example is what we just did. We just took communion. Now, in this particular church, we just figure, hey, Jesus said, do this as often as you come together in remembrance of me. We have communion every time we come together. Now, somebody says, that's weird. We only do it once a month. That's okay. But you come here, you're going to get communion Tuesday, you're going to get communion Thursday, you're going to get communion Sunday. People say, that's strange. Ain't you going to make it cheap? How do you cheapen the blood of Jesus? Huh? How do you mess up by doing something he wants? And this is what's always puzzled me, even as a pastor. As I was coming up in Christianity, I've always thought, even out loud at times, speaking to people, I'd say, how do you mess up God's way by doing what he says? If he said, do this as often as you come together in remembrance of me, every time you come together, everybody wants to sit around El Pollo Loco more than they do the table of the Lord. We're going to have a barbecue out back. You get more people coming out to the barbecue than you get to coming out on the Lord's table. So I've always sat there and even talked out loud, and there were individuals that, hey, I know you don't agree with that because I voiced it out. I've always thought, like, how do you mess up God's things by doing what he says? And yet the church looks at us like, hey, that's strange. That's a little unorthodox what you guys do there. Then they say, how come you guys don't have altar calls? See, because they're used to having altar calls. Well, you don't need an altar call if during the table of grace you receive grace from sin and you've also received healing in the broken body of Jesus. Now, about the only thing that does is that robs me of that human, I guess, desire to say, let's validate my sermon with all these people running to the altar. I can care less. I got a different viewpoint of things. It's a great experiment. It's like Jesus. You put the word out, see what sticks. If I was leaving, I'd say the same thing he did. When I return, will I find faith? That's all he did. He sowed the word, and let's see what grows. It's none of my business to shake you and see if anything's produced. I wish I had $1 for every time people do what Jesus said don't do. Jesus said, when you pray, pray in secret. And yet every time I turn on the television set, everybody's praying to be seen of men. Huh? He said, when you give, don't tell your right hand what your left hand is doing. And what does everybody do? Who wants to give $1,000 for this meeting? And everybody stands up in the audience so everybody can see him. Now, what did Jesus say about stuff like that? He said, they have their reward. They've been seen of men. Everything Jesus said don't do, the church does. And then the things Jesus said to do, when you do them, they think you're weird. So what we're dealing with is a system. God has a system, and then let's refer to him as what he is, the Antichrist. has a system in the end, or we can go ahead and just refer to him as the devil, because the devil's the one that empowers the Antichrist. It's a system that's been in effect since the beginning. The Bible says in the book of Genesis that when God put Adam in the garden, he told him of all the trees in the garden you could freely eat, just don't eat of that one. That's what I say. This is God. Don't eat of that one. So Adam doesn't eat. God creates the woman for him, and he's supposed to instruct her. He's supposed to be in charge of her. He's supposed to be taking care of everything in the garden. The same way God rules and reigns over heaven, Adam was supposed to rule and reign over the earth, including the woman. Not in a sense that, like the Taliban stuff, but he was supposed to take care of her. That was his helpmeet. All right? That was his job. He was supposed to talk to her about the things of God. He was supposed to set her straight when she said, tell me again what God said. He was supposed to tell her, not wait for some serpent to come talk to her. This is why I often tell men, if you don't talk to your wife, somebody else will. This is why Paul said, women, keep silent in the church. You got a question? Ask your own husband at home. That's embarrassing. It's a shame to your man that he sits next to you in church and you got to ask me questions about the things of God. What's that dude next to you? Worthless? Is he stupid? Is he illiterate? Does he not study his Bible? Because every time you ask me questions, that's what happens. Which says, Brother Daniel, this ding-a-ling here hadn't done a thing for me. He doesn't teach me a darn thing. He got about as much understanding of the Bible as that pulpit in front of you, made of wood. And so Paul said, now I'm just teasing, but Paul said in the Corinthian church straight, said, you got a question, you ask your own husbands at home. See, we can go all night on that one, because that gets people in trouble. You always want to find out why, the deacon runs off with the sister. Huh? Or the bishop's laying up with the, choir director. That's why. Adam had a role, he didn't play it. The devil talks to his woman. Again, they lose control of that which God gave them. They lose control or they lose possession of the creation. And it gets turned over to the devil. Jesus, or God, comes on the scene and says, Adam, because you've done this thing, this is what's going to happen. And he tells him, there's coming one, the seed of the woman. And from that moment on, the devil heard it. From that moment on, the devil established a system that is going to not only contradict God, while at the same time looking like God, but he's going to set into motion a system that for the most part, the world is going to accept. And isn't that tragic that, and again, I've said this often, God never changed his system. His system's always the same. Bring the tithe to the storehouse. It didn't change. You always got that selfish jackass who decides to say, that was the Old Testament. By the time you read Jesus, what did he say? These things you ought to have done. Jesus in the New Testament says, you ought to pay your tithes. Paul speaks of the same thing when he writes to the Corinthian church. Tithing didn't end with the Old Covenant. See, that's what a selfish person thinks. That's what a person who is motivated not to give to God thinks. A person who doesn't want to part with their money is viewing the Word of God, looking for every loophole to try to get out from doing it. God's system never changed. God still wants his. And again, people that don't understand the tithe are the first ones to cry, what'd you do with the money? They're the ones screaming for audits. And I'll guarantee you this, that same person screaming for audits, I'd like to see the IRS audit him because all the money he says he gave to the church, I bet you he never gave it. Huh? See, the thief yells the loudest when he gets robbed. So the devil set out from that moment to establish a system that eventually the world would believe. Now again, they asked Jesus, they said, Jesus, tell us about the kingdom. Now this is profound. Jesus answered, he said, I'll tell you about the kingdom. And he started telling parables. He says, the kingdom of God is like a man who went out and sowed seed. Some fell on the wayside, right? Unplowed soil. Some fell on the stones. Some fell among thorns. And then he said, but some fell on good ground. Now, that's 1 out of 4. Fraction. 75%. 25%. Right? Listen, the majority of folk ain't going to make it, baby. That's it. They asked Jesus, explain to us the kingdom. And Jesus says, I'll tell you. A man went out to sow seed. He tells this parable, and then they go, what does that mean? He says, how do you expect to understand the kingdom if you don't understand this parable? So the parable sums up literally the way the kingdom of God works. Could you imagine? Listen, I don't care how many people you witness to. You can be like Dwight Moody and just say, I'm going to go out and get one a day for the rest of my life. Hey, listen, I don't condemn anybody for that. If that's what God gave you to do, you do it. But Jesus said, this is the kingdom. The majority of folk ain't going to make it. That's why I tell people, if you understand this parable, this is what makes you raise your hands and shout when the piano starts playing during worship. If you don't understand this, you will not understand that you are one lucky son of a buck, that while 75% won't come in, God chose you. The treasure in the field. See, that parable he told, he said a man went out into the field when he found treasure. He sold all he possessed, came back, bought the field. Now, was the field the treasure? Was everything in the field treasure? But he sold everything he possessed to buy the field so he can find some treasure. See, I know this messes up evangelical people, because evangelical people, they want to redeem the earth. I don't know what for. It's going to blow up at the end. Huh? They want to build monuments to Jesus on the planet. What for? It's going to blow up in the end. Jesus doesn't need any monuments down here. They got to save the whole world. He ain't after the whole world. Jesus wasn't even after the whole world. That's why when they said, what's this Syrophoenician woman doing? She says, come and take care of my daughter. She's sick. He says, why should I give the children's bread to dogs? He had no interest in her. Till he was moved by her faith. Jesus made it clear, I'm here before the lost sheep. Selective. Discriminating. Nobody likes to hear that word. But he knew what he wanted. There's a handful of folk he's looking for. And when you understand that, that's basic Christianity. I wish they'd teach that. That's basic Christianity. We all know that. There's some that are chosen. The others aren't. You strike up the music, that'll make you throw your hands up and dance a jig. He chose me. Folk are going to hell. I'm not. I'm redeemed. My name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life. The angels rejoiced when I came. And when we understand, how do you not want to sing your praises to God? That's what this system's about. People aren't going to hell. 3/4 of these people aren't going to hell because they're irreligious, because they don't believe in something. They're going to hell because they've attached themselves to this system that the book of Revelation refers to as the system of Babylon. It's not because they're religious. Now, let's read. Verse number 9, 18:9. Revelation, chapter 18, verse 9. Now remember in chapter 16, the last vials poured out, and God says, I remembered Babylon. Now if you remember the vials being poured out, the wrath of God is now being poured out on the enemies. You got Ethiopia, you got Turkey, you got Egypt, you got literally the region, Iran, Iraq, Jordan. There's nations that are going to get the daylights beat out of them by God. All right? This is why, if you study even politics, you understand why the Middle East is such a hotbed of political activity, why it's always war-torn. There's a rationale for all of this. This is why they can't be bought by the West. This is why they put up $50 million for the capture of Osama bin Laden, and they never bite for that. They're not interested in cash, man. This is war. This is such an intense hatred for the people of God, to the extent that they're not even willing to sell out their mother like they do in everything else. Chapter 18, verse 9. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her. So Babylon becomes a system where all the kings of the earth basically have partaken of her. Now again, you can't say that about the Catholic Church. You can't say that about the Muslim Church. You can't say that about Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, or any religion in our minds. There's none that fit this. The kings of the earth who've committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, because God's going to lay it on them. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour the judgment is come. And by the way, Babylon is not the U.S., okay? A lot of numbskulls, I guess, who never read the book want to put the U.S. on there because they see the lavish life that we live. They look and say, well, every nation has to bow to the U.S. Every nation has to, come to the U.S. for money. And some of you know better than that. The U.S. doesn't have all the money. It's an illusion that we have money. Our gold standard is set from Britain. Everybody thinks, that we shook off the British during the Revolutionary War. We never shook off the British. They still control us. That's why Tony Blair's talking like he does. Where's little brother? We don't control the world money. Man, there's folk in Germany, France, Britain, and the U.S. that control it, and they have no allegiance to a nation. And we've talked about this also. Verse 11. The merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her. No man buys her merchandise anymore. Merchandise, gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, fine wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, manners of all precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, beasts, sheep, horses, chariots, slaves, and the souls of men. And the fruits of thy soul that your soul has lusted after are departed. So everything that men want, she has. Does that sound like the Catholic Church? I'll tell you what, there ain't nothing she has that I want. All right? Somebody said, it's the Muslims. They ain't got nothing I want either. All right? Think about it. Do any of those religious systems own all the flour, all the oil, all the corn, all the wine, anything like that? You can't. It does not fit. Somebody says, well, the U.S. got all that. No, we got that stuff, but we got to buy it. All right? But we don't control none of that. The fruits that their soul lusted after are departed from thee. The things that were dainty and goodly are departed from you. You shall find them no more at all. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. So in the 15th verse, we find that it is the merchants that are crying because the merchants make money off of her. They make money off of this system. So this beast, or this great harlot of Revelation, that she's also typified as the whore riding on these seven-headed beasts, which basically typifies these nations. She is now being brought down by God, and merchants now cry because people made money off of her. Verse 16. They said, alas, the great city which was clothed in fine linen, purple, scarlet, decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls, 1 hour so great riches come to nothing. Every shipmaster, all the company ships, all the sailors, and many as made trade by the sea, stood afar off. They cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like this great city? They cast dust on their heads, they cried, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, that great city wherein where everybody was made rich, all that had ships by the sea, by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she's made desolate. Then heaven rejoices. So the earth cries, but heaven rejoices. This is like one of those revenge movies where the bad guy through the whole movie. You ever watch these movies at the show? Go to the show, you watch a movie where for an hour and a half the bad guys literally wreak havoc on all the good people, and at the end the good guy kills them. Right? I've often told people, you don't need to go to Hollywood for a good storyline. That's all here. From the time of Adam till this point, the devil literally wreaks havoc on the planet, but at the end, in one scene, God comes down and in one strike deals with them. And then what happens? Heaven rejoices. The earth laments, but heaven rejoices. So this system isn't going to be a system of religion the way we view it. And again, this book was not a Western book. This is an Eastern book. Its thought and its ideas are Eastern. They're not Western. And our problem is that we try to literally juxtapose our cultural ideas and our English meanings, and I've often said this, because it's written in English, we think that the English words in there mean what they mean today, but they don't. So as a result of that, we misinterpret things, and we turn Babylon into this false system of religion, and everybody's pointing at the Catholic Church, the Muslim Church, all these other churches that are growing, or all these other religious systems, we try to blame it on them. But that's not what it... Now, the devil loves this, because as long as you got the wrong, I guess, religion in the crosshairs, you ain't never going to put the devil in the crosshairs where he belongs. And you got churches do nothing but beat up on the Catholic Church. Catholic Church in trouble, people. I don't need to tell you. The Catholic Church is in trouble right now. Now, who didn't know priests molested kids? Who didn't know that? Huh? Why is it all of a sudden big news now? Who didn't know that? Surprise anybody? I mean, the Catholic Church said, we don't mind homosexual priests that you got to be celibate. They'll never commit the sin. So you could be gay and be a priest. Because provided you were celibate, you'd never sin. That's what they said. That was their logic and their rationale. Now see, this is what drives me crazy. I'll tell you, this will drive you crazy. The gay community says we want to be Boy Scout leaders. We want to be football coaches. We want to teach preschools, and we want to teach kids. We want to be counselors. We want to do everything. We're just like everybody else. Now, didn't we just find out with the Catholic Church what happens when you got gay people in charge of kids? Now, you notice nobody calls them gay. They call them pedophiles. They don't call them gay. Where are the gays at? How come they're not out there protesting for these priests? Huh? Now, how come the world is ready to accept Boy Scouts or homosexuals as Cub Scout leaders or Boy Scout leaders? Why is the world ready to accept that? It's because of this system. That's why. This system that literally envelops the minds. Again, we come back to our two words. The aeon, translated world. The cosmos, translated world. Literally speaking of the ideas, the current zeitgeist of the day. Literally that which envelops every generation. It is an evolutionary idea because it never stays the same. It's dynamic in that it continually changes with each generation. This is why progressively we look at things and say, every generation. I remember my dad was always telling me about back in my days, and he would tell me how great it was. I hate to admit that I've gotten old enough to say back in my days, right? Because I used to think my dad was a square. He'd say, get a haircut. Men don't wear their hair like that. Man, I'm talking about, I grew up in the 60s, man. The Beatles showed up, but we didn't want a haircut anymore. Right? That was just the rebellion of the 60s and even the early 70s, man. Now I'm looking at hairdo saying, oh, that's too much. Yeah, I don't mind long hair, but not long blue hair. All right? I still can't get with the earring thing. I think I'll leave that one alone. Or the earrings thing. That's just me. The system of the world is continually changing. And the devil, he's not stupid. This system continues even today. Now, we've been reading Rule by Secrecy, Pawns in the Game. We've been reading Inside American Education. We were reading about how this system becomes perpetuated even in our midst today. How it continually is brought about through systems or through areas such as education, art, and that includes song, TV, movies, all the arts. I mean, I just saw Spider-Man. Took my kids, we saw Spider-Man. Anybody else see Spider-Man? Now listen, maybe it's because I'm a Christian and I have a different perspective, but did you wonder where Peter Parker's father was? And let me ask you a question, see if you're thinking like me. The only girl who had a father in that movie, what was her father like? He abused her. Now, are we just making these things up, or is this what all the movies do? Every single movie is destroying the notion of fathers. I'm not kidding. I sit down, I'm watching a movie with my daughter, and you know how you don't pay attention to kid movies? To me, if you ain't blowing stuff up, So So all of a sudden I look and girl's in trouble. She's running away from home. And I look at my daughter and say, where's her dad? Oh, she ain't got one. Why would Hollywood launch an attack on fathers? Now, let's ask the question. Do they not like men? Huh? Do they not? I mean, you're thinking, are they really out to, do you think people in Hollywood really have an agenda against men, against fathers? What drives these ideas and these notions? It's this system, right? And what really is at stake isn't fathers in the flesh, but it's God, the Father. And if you raise a generation of children outside the knowledge of a father, how are you going to tell a kid about God the Father? How are you going to teach him what Jesus said when the disciples said, teach us to pray? And he says, our Father who art in heaven. See, this isn't just something that comes about. This is just an example. I took, we had good time at church, and we went out to dinner, and we said, let's go watch Spider-Man and just end our Sunday. And we went out. It's a good movie. It was a lot of fun watching. But it just drove me crazy. I'm sitting there going, this fella don't have a dad, and the only father in the movie was abusing his daughter. It's like I went with Whitney, and we saw American Beauty with Kevin Spacey. Remember that? We're sitting in the show, won all these awards. So I said, let's go check this movie out. Right? Kevin Spacey's a father, but his wife's cheating on him. The daughter disrespects him. And then the only other father in the movie is a homosexual. I'm not making this stuff up. Forrest Gump had a dad, just didn't know him. Hey, think about this. This movie won all the awards when it came out. Forrest Gump didn't have a dad, but the girl that had a dad, what was he doing to her? Huh? That drunk was socking her around and, yeah. Now, you think this is an accident? I don't have to tell you about the music. You think half them girls that sing not only don't have a father, but they don't even want one. And you don't think this affects it? Now, where does this come from? Again, it comes from this system. Now, see, this is how the devil brings people into the system. Because, see, when he brings destruction on the system of Babylon, remember, these people are... Now, let's look at it real quick. Let's look at that 18th chapter. Let's look at a couple verses up. Verse number 3. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. The merchants of the earth wax rich through the abundance of her delicacies. I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partaker of her sins, that you receive not her plagues, for her sins have reached to heaven, and God remembered her iniquity. Now, she's typified in the previous chapters by being drunk on the blood of the saints. Now, what does this mean? It means that even the saints, even God's people, God's chosen people, become so entwined or so wrapped up in this system that I'm telling you, except for a miracle, or except for an Elijah, except for a preacher that understands this stuff, the church ain't getting out. How can you get out of a system if you don't know it's headed for destruction? Huh? We can jump around the platform all we want yelling, woman, thou art loosed. Really, woman, thou art loosed. What is she being loosed from? Huh? The government, after the Second World War, when the women's movement started, they were preaching the same message. Woman, thou art loosed. And they came up with the Fair Credit Act. You know what the Fair Credit Act is, don't you? Back when my mom and dad were first married, everything was in my dad's name. And God forbid if he'd have passed away, my mom had no credit. She didn't have nothing because everything was in his name. He was the patriarch. Well, they said, that ain't fair. They passed the Fair Credit Act. You know what the Fair Credit Act means? It means that she can go behind his back to the jewelry store and start financing things. Woman, thou art loosed. You know what that meant? It meant she can go to the bank, open up accounts. Don't need a signature. Why? Because she's a person too. Now listen, I'm not telling you this is bad. I'm just telling you they've been preaching that message forever. Woman, thou art loose. Now tell me what system that is. Huh? What did God say to the woman because she ate of the fruit? He said to her, he looked her right in the eye and said, woman, because you have done this thing, all the things you desire will come to him, to you through him. Right? Isn't that what he said? Thy desire shall be to your husband. Whatever you want, whatever you need is coming through him. So when the government steps in and says, oh, this ain't right what we did to ladies. Woman, thou art loosed. What are they doing? Why is the church telling women they're loosed? And all they're doing is taking portions of their Social Security and welfare. Huh? They ain't loosed. They're bound. You know, people, the church has come to a place where the church doesn't even recognize what's right or wrong anymore. The church doesn't even know what's good and bad. The church doesn't even have a moral compass anymore as to what God is saying. The church thinks its mission is to take care of homeless and needy people. And what did Jesus say about homeless and needy people? The poor will always be with you. Did he say they're the priority? No. Now, you got a world right now, you know, even back when Hillary was president. She was made an ambassador to women and children. Is there anything more important in society than women and children today? Huh? So what's the church doing? Women and children. That's what the church is. It's women and children. Forget about the man. We were dealing with women and children. And then they got these crazy evangelical strategies. Go get the children. And they bring the women. And the women bring the men. Isn't that backwards? Huh? You know, you talk to most women that are sane, and they will tell you how they wish their husbands would take the spiritual reins of their house. That they wish their husband would say, let's go to church. That they wish they don't even care where they go to church as long as the husband says, this is the place. When the devil inaugurated his system. See, God told the devil what's going to happen. There's coming one born of a woman who'll bruise your head and the process bruise your heel. From that point on, the devil isn't stupid. He established counterfeits. I mean, people think when the Bible was written, that was the first book that ever described a virgin birth. It wasn't. You read the Genesis of most cultures, they all have a creation epic. Many of them sound just like ours. They all got virgin births. They all have that three-pronged matrix. God, the feminine deity, the feminine aspect, and the incarnate Son to save. Just like Horus in Egypt. Just like Nimrod or Tammuz in Babylon, Acadia. Same thing. Same ideas. Adonai or Adonis of the Greeks and the Romans. Same thing, an incarnate. This isn't a mystery. The devil utilizes these aspects to drive home his system to the extent that the church doesn't know what's up from down. So God says, my people need to come out from her. And why don't they? Because they don't even know they're stuck. They don't even know their thoughts, their ideas, and their philosophy. They don't even understand that their thoughts and ideologies come from the system of Babylon. Have no idea. And they think it's church. See, that's why I get so upset when I watch Christian television, is because, have you noticed that the more you read the Bible and then the more you watch these guys, the more you realize they don't know what the Bible says? Huh? You know, most television programming that's Christian is Showtime. I mean, they're trying to compete with special effects in Hollywood. You know, nobody wants to be like Jesus. A blind man came to Jesus, he spit in his eye. I never seen somebody spit at somebody on TV. Why not? Could you imagine somebody come up, Brother Daniel, I need prayer. Go your way, your faith made you whole. Somebody say, how insensitive. You know, the way you're supposed to do it is put on a show. Well, come here and let me put my hands on thee. And pray to God and beseech him, pounding our chests. It's Showtime. Where do we get that from? Why do we think God has to compete with this? That's why I get mad. I got to bring up old Bayless Connolly. Buys 14 acres with church money, and the city's going to tell him to step off because they want Costco there. And then they want to hire lawyers. Hire lawyers. Hire lawyers. Remember that movie with Jim Carrey, Liar, Liar? And the kid says, Dad, why you lie? He says, I'm a lawyer. I have to lie. Huh? It's like that story about St. Peter. Saw the devil kicking down the gates of heaven. And Peter tells him to knock it off or he's going to take it up with God. And the devil starts laughing. He says, I'll show you, devil. I'll sue you. The devil started laughing. He said, why are you laughing? The devil says, where are you going to get a lawyer? Why you want to hire a lawyer and fight in the arena of the devil? Huh? See, again, I'm just dumb enough to have read this book and realize that when the king or when the city don't want to do what you want, you do like Elijah. You walk into the city council chamber and say, it ain't going to rain. Y'all going to go broke. You don't, listen, I'll tell you, you walk into a city council meeting where they want to take what's God's, tell me that if you walked in there and said, you'll all go broke. Listen, I'm going to tell you, you don't think God will back your play like he did Elijah's? Huh? God will probably sit down and say, it's about time somebody believe my word. Instead, you got to sit there and deal with the LA Times and everybody feeling sorry for Bayless, calling them up. Brother, we're behind you. We're encouraging you. Oh, yeah, you get them good lawyers, brother. Man, I'm going to tell you what. It's a good thing I ain't Bayless because I'll be like the Christian Science Monitor. You all know about that is one of the most reputable papers. Do you know that if you cite the Christian Science Monitor on college term papers, man, the professor's eyes go, whoa, because that thing is known for its veracity. You know how the Christian Science Monitor started? When Christian Science first started, and reporters or celebrities or anybody came along and said something bad about Christian scientists, you know what they did? They sent spies, and they'd take pictures of you with a boy. They would take pictures of you on a hay bale behind a horse. They would go into your bank account. They would prove you're a thief and publish it. And nobody ever messed with them again. Never. Never. Now, look, you all know about Christian Science. They're weird. That's a cult. We all know that. You know why nobody messes with them? Huh? Because somebody's going to be going through your trash tonight. Huh? Somebody's be going through your cable bill and find out what kind of movies you're renting when nobody's looking. Huh? They're going to get your hotel bill and look for the incidentals. Credit card receipts and publish them. Now tell me, those 5 jackasses sitting on that Cypress City Council that say, we want Costco, we want tax revenue. Tell me, those guys, you can't follow them to the crack house in El Monte like they did Councilman Alatorre from L.A. Tell me you can't videotape him in a playground like they did Mike Hernandez snorting coke off his dashboard. Tell me if you follow those guys, you can't catch them doing that. Oh, no, but we want to get a lawyer. Huh? Listen, when the Pharisees tried to call Jesus on stuff, what'd he say? You hypocrites, you whited walls, you cover real pretty the outside, but on the inside you're full of dead men's bones. See, you think people didn't know that? Sometimes all you need is somebody bring it out. I'm just saying, this is a good playbook.
Yeah.
Man, you don't need to mess with anything else. Now, where do people get the idea, oh, woe's me, the city's coming. We don't got enough parking. We'll have to get a lawyer. Where did that whole idea come from? The system, right? Saints don't have to play ball in that system. Just like I was listening to the news today, 240-pound girl won her court case. Y'all hear about that? She gets to be an aerobic instructor. Give me a break. A 240-pound jazzercise instructor? Huh? Now, the government is saying you have to hire her. Charles, when you get your gym, you have to hire the fat girl. Now tell me, now they said, this is a good decision because we believe that this will educate the people. No, educate? You're not in business to educate, you're in business to jazzercise. Right? Now, everybody says, oh, this is no, what's taking place? What's taking place is this system is teaching people how to think. Now, y'all agree it's ridiculous? Let's talk about this in 5 years when all the instructors are fat slobs. Huh? Hey, look, let's go a step further. They just said it's okay for this 245-pound woman to be a jazzercise instructor, but they're about ready to tax soda because of fat people. Y'all know about that, right? The soda tax? The soda tax, man. Just like the cigarettes. They say, well, and you know the logic behind that's so stupid? Do you know that it's better for people that smoke to die young? Because you don't have to pay their Social Security. You don't have to pay their Medicare. You don't have to. They actually save you money as a society. Even if they were hospitalized for $50,000 in 1 year while they were dying, somebody says, oh, that's just wasting our money. But you make it up on the back end. You really do. Listen, this is a numbers game. It's the same thing with fat people. If you're fat and you got health problems and you die young, they don't got to give you Social Security for 25 years. Say, oh, he was a good brother, had diabetes, died at 55. Tragic, absolutely tragic. But guess what? You don't have to get Social Security, welfare. You don't got to get nothing. Medicare, Medi-Cal, nothing. Don't have to get him hospice. You got to get him nothing. He is through and off the books. In fact, the government's going to make some money on that deal. They're going to pay fat tax now. It's going. Y'all know about the SUV tax, right? They want you to pay $3,000 extra when you buy an SUV, and then you got to pay per mile a tax. Man, don't you people watch nothing? What y'all watching? 2 cents per mile if you got an SUV. Now, you know the legislators that all signed this, guess what they drive? You got it. Now, what are they doing? Now, listen, what are they doing? If you say, I'm buying an SUV, now, are you really free? But what's taking place? Nobody's telling you how to think. Nobody's telling you what to do, but they're teaching you how to think. Do you like that idea? I'm just telling you 3 current pieces of legislation that are going through. This is the government now. This is stuff. What are they doing? It's preparing a system. This is how people, this is how you come to these things. This is what I say. Now, remember, we're talking about the Jews. The Jews are in Russia. And the Jews, as long as they had the idea that we're God's chosen people, he delivered us from Egypt, delivered us from Assyria, he delivered us from Babylon, delivered us from the Greeks, delivered us from the Romans. As long as they thought like that, they never wanted to be Russian. So how the Russians fix that? They put them in school. They gave them education. Right? Now, if you don't think like people want you to think, especially as Christians, and that's what's been the problem of this nation forever, and that is that we're all Christians. And even if you're not a Christian, you have Christian ideals, and you have Christian morals to the extent that morality was defined by the majority, which was Christianity. So, in essence, our country, even in swinging towards socialism, the real enemy is Christianity. So as we read about this system of Babylon and the means or the way in which the devil opposes it, he's opposing it through everything around us. And see, again, the problem with the church is that the church doesn't even recognize the devil or recognize the devil's system when it's in our face. Doesn't even recognize it. And the number one reason is because they have never been taught God's system. If you understand, let's take an example. If you understand God's system as far as tithing is concerned, and somebody comes up with alternative systems of tithing, what are you going to do? You're going to reject it. If you understand God's will and purpose for marriage, and you understand the marriage vow, the marriage covenant, if you understand these things as a covenant in God's word, can people come and say, oh, no, that's not what that means. This is just a temporary arrangement. There's no marriage or given in marriage in heaven, so whether you stay married down here doesn't mean anything. Are you going to accept or reject that? You're going to reject it. If you understand God's system, you're able to do that. So why is the church over here playing games with marriage counseling? What counseling do people need when they're going through rocky times in marriage? Huh? You need to sit there and listen to their mess? No. Just tell them to keep their commitment. They made a commitment before God. They made a commitment before folk. Now think about that. That's a commitment. That is a covenant. Now failure in that covenant. Now see, Jesus said, except for fornication, don't do this. Don't divorce. There's no rationale for divorce ever. Period. That's it. Now, chicks out there playing the harlot, I look at the guy and say, go get a new one. Most people tell me, brother, what about forgiveness? That's if he can handle it. If the fella can take it. But you got the church world don't even know what side to stand on because they don't know God's system. They don't recognize the devil if he stood and blew in their face. Because this system literally is one that is taking us to that point where, as we read in Revelation, the definition or the criteria by which this system operates is that she has everything you want. Think about it. There ain't nothing you want that she doesn't have. What are you willing to give up for it? And at what point are we willing to compromise to be a part of that? And we can't play with that. As God's people, we can't play with this mess. And this is what we're dealing with. This is why we're even talking about, we left off in Hitler. And Hitler did the same thing. Hitler's movement started, as far as they said, it's a grassroots movement. But he started with the Hitler Youth Movement. Why would you deal with the Hitler Youth Movement? Huh? Because you educate the kids. That's right. You indoctrinate the kids, and you don't have to fire a shot during the revolution. They just take it. You know, when you look at the Cambodian killing fields, the people who overran the Cambodians, that Khmer Rouge, they were kids. Why do you use kids? Look at a lot of these young terrorists. How much training do you have to have before you actually strap yourself up with bombs and go blow yourself up? Huh? Since you're a kid. Why do they do this? Start to change your thinking. Start to twist your mind. That's what we're talking about. That's why we deviated off of Hitler and came into the areas of education. It's where folk like John Dewey come on the scene. And, you know, all of you remember saying this because I said it too, man. I'm in 7th grade. We got to take algebra. And everybody said it. Tell me that you didn't say, why do we have to learn this? When are we ever going to use this in life? How many of you said that when you read that? Huh? X plus Y equals N, and you're going, what is this? You know, I'm 42 years old. I put my hands to do a lot of things, man. Measuring, cutting, building, just everything. You know, I'm yet to have to find out, you know, what that had to do with the train traveling east from New York to Pennsylvania, carrying 36. I'm yet to have to do any of that. I was right. Ain't going to need that in life. But when John Dewey came in and said there are no absolutes, the Christian people of this country said, yes, there are. And even non-Christian people, because they were raised in a nation where there were absolutes, rejected it. So John Dewey brings philosophy back, and John Dewey's proponents come back, and it continually was rejected. So suddenly they brought back his philosophy, renowned as problem-solving education. And who doesn't want kids to learn how to solve problems? Did you notice that? Listen, it's different now, but when I was a kid, math was 1 plus 1, 10 times 64, 16 divided by 2. It was always numbers. All of a sudden, I get to 7th grade, and the numbers disappeared. Johnny got 30 apples. If he only eats half of one every time he's hungry and eats 3 times a day, and gives his girlfriend Sue 2 of them because she's going to be an aerobic instructor when she grows up, how many apples will he have? And I'm going, what happened to the numbers? When problem-solving education came in, it wasn't brought in. It was brought in as a math class. But do you know what it really was? It was a way to teach you that X isn't always X. X is not absolute, depending on what factors you're going to be using. Huh? So that's why you have, little Johnny in the hood. He hits a kid in the head and takes his nickel. And they say, very good, considering the factors in his life. His dad don't work, his mother's on welfare, and he'll never have a bike like that had he not used his creative mind. Very good, little Johnny. Huh? Right? This is where these ideas came from. Now, on the other hand, Charles, he grew up somewhere else, and Charles says, I want a bike. I'm going to do odd jobs and work. His factors are different. Very good, Charles. We got the same thing. Huh? Now, tell me, little Johnny needs to be in prison. Huh? Or worse. But see, you ain't going to learn that if you accept this stuff. The one that I hate the most is the one where you ask a kid, what'd you get in school? What'd you get in grades? I got an S. You got an S? Yeah. If you're real good, you get an S plus, or you get an S, or you get an S minus. But everybody in school gets an S. That way you can't tell who the stupid kids are. Everybody gets, they say, well, we don't want to give them an A to F because it'll make kids feel bad. They ought to feel bad. They're stupid. And the ones that ought to feel ashamed are their parents. But even the stupid parents, the most negligent parents, see S minus, say, well, that's pretty good. The kid that's brainy gets an S plus. Under that logic, you're only 2 notches down from him. Right? I hate that. Or they say, we don't want to give letter grades. What'd you get? 4. What's 4? Well, everybody gets 4, 3, 2, or 1. What's that? What is this stuff? What are you getting numbers for? What do numbers mean? Now again, what is the system doing? The system is trying to teach you that we're all the same. And we're not all the same. Yeah, they got 5s too. Yeah, number 1 used to mean you're good. Now it means you're bad. But this is all part of this system. It's all part of programming the way you think. And what happens is parents, they watch all this go on and they say, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, this is good. We don't want to damage their self-esteem. It's like, hey, your kid play. I hate this too because I've always grown up in sports. You got kids playing t-ball and you see little kid with his hat and his t-ball uniform. Hey, who won? Well, nobody. There ain't no winners or losing in t-ball. What? Soccer? Who won? Oh, we don't keep score. What do you mean you don't keep score? So you didn't win and you didn't lose. No, so what are you doing? Huh? So you can go to the losing kid and they're out having pizza too. Huh? You go to the kid who lost and it's like, how'd you guys do? Did you lose? Well, no, we don't lose. Man, tell me the real world ain't going to come up and kick them between the eyes. Huh? This and hey, listen, I've talked to kids like this. We're talking about S- kids. In my eyes, really it means F. All right? But I talk to these kids who have these, can't even talk English right, and I say, so what you want to do, man? I want to be a police officer. No way, baby. You got to take a test for that too. Hey, so what you going to do when you grow up? I want to be a fireman. It's like, you ain't going to be a fireman. You may be the janitor in the firehouse, but you ain't going to be the fireman. But could you imagine, you got kids running around talking about they're going to be a fireman? And they're at the low end of the academic scale, and they think they're okay because it's S? Now, what are they doing to people? What are they doing? And see, that's why I say, the church doesn't even recognize what's going on. That's why the church schools all do the same crap. Hey, the church schools do that too. Take your kid to Christian school, they do the same mess. Because they've bought in to the system. Now listen, does God establish criteria that's absolute? Huh? He does. God establishes a criteria that's absolute. Either you're born again in Jesus or you're not. You can't play games with that. Oh yeah, but he lives good. That's why they always peg you and say something like, well, what about that guy? That Mormon's really good. He's honest. He doesn't steal. He don't even drink caffeine, bless God. You telling me he's going to hell? Yes. If he ain't born again, he is. Everybody's always trying to find the other way in. That's why right now, especially, unfortunate, listen, people are really upset at the Muslims. But I think for the first time in their lives, people are starting to understand what being a Muslim is really about. And everybody's upset saying, how many times have you heard on the news, they say, Islam is a religion of peace. How many times have you heard that on the news? You know what Islam means, don't you? Islam is talking about the committed, the dedicated. It don't say nothing about peace. It doesn't say anything about peace. You ever read about a Jehovah's Witness blowing himself up in a pizza parlor? Huh? When was the last time a follower of Confucius strapped himself with bombs in an airplane? Huh? Don't remember? Or it doesn't happen? When was the last time, somebody from the Baha'i faith took an airplane full of people? Huh? Blow up military targets. Anybody remember any other religion doing it? But the Muslims do it, right? Every single day. Who's kidnapping folk in the Philippines? Who's killing white people in Indonesia? Huh? Does that sound like the religion of peace? Does it? Now, listen, I'm not, I don't care if somebody's a Muslim. Somebody said, well, they're cool Muslims. They may be. But ask them how they feel about their folk doing that. Listen, I'm on it. Just ask them, so what you think of your religion doing this? And see what they say. Because they better condemn it. Listen, if they don't condemn it, you want them people at the same, bus stop as you or your kids? Now, why are people thinking like this? It's the system. And if we don't understand God's system, you'll fall for any system. And this is what the devil's planned from the start. And it comes from, again, the aeon, the world's ideas. It comes from the cosmos. Literally, the cosmos, a better definition, is the flow. The world flows downstream. You know how hard it is to go upstream on a downstream? Takes work. You know, it takes work to come to church. It takes work to read your Bible. It takes work to research things. It takes work to do all these things. But eternity's at stake. Literally, eternity's at stake. Now, we didn't get a chance too much to read this. We want to just deal with how this system breaks down. But we'll be reading some more, and we're going to be touching on those areas of how these systems actually are affecting us. Because that's what we're doing, in essence. We're just bringing out the system of Babylon. Why does God hold Babylon in such contempt that after he blazes on the nations that he hates, that he decides, now Babylon's going to get some special TLC from me? Huh? Because Babylon is not only in existence during this time, but Babylon literally is what rules everything. Especially in this nation, especially Christians. That's why he says to his people, come out from this system, come out from Babylon. Because God's people, specifically the church, during this time of Revelation, it's these Jews that are all mingled in it, but the church is there too. It's that whole notion of mammon, the god of mammon, that search for that which isn't from God. It's that continual search for the harvest, that which in many cases is also typified by Cain's sacrifice, the fruit of his hands, that which is held up even above the things of God, the fruit of our labor, the fruit of our hands, and want to present it to God. God, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to toil. I'm going to bring such a big harvest. I'm going to load you up, God. I'm going to give you all my money. And yet what we find is God, we serve a God who multiplies money. So we're trying to find out. We're defining the system. All right. Any questions? Yeah, Whitney.